Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This is Eisenherz and today I want to talk to you guys about Stax. But because I'm not an expert on everything, I have a very good friend of mine here. Please welcome Matt.
Thanks for having me, boss. Yeah, my name is Matt. I'm a cEDH Urza player, also known as Necrowin1 from Twitch, and I'm happy to join you here today, bud.
It's very nice to have you here, Matt. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here and answer a few of my questions. So you're one of the few people that still plays Urza Power Scepter over Urza Polykraken, just like me, and you do so very successfully. Can you please explain to me why do you prefer to play UPS over Polykraken, and what is your general piloting approach with UPS?
So the reason I pivoted to UPS as opposed to Polykraken is because the Polykraken deck to me functions more as a mid-range shell, where you're looking to play Urza as soon as possible, cast Urza on 2, worst case cast Urza on 3, and then backdoor into playing your poly combos, your Proteus stack combos, turn 4 or 5, sticking them through some key pieces of interaction, resolving Tidespout Tyrant or Hullbreaker Horror, and winning from there. For me personally, I kind of prefer playing more of the control element to the game, where you could play a little bit slower and you could win towards that latter half of the game. Now, not to say Polykraken's not capable of that, because it most definitely is, but in my experience playing Power Scepter, the creature variant, it's a little bit more consistent to go into those later turns once the table's trying to play chicken and someone's trying to win, and you just hit a point of the game where the players can't win anymore. Instead of me trying to actively fish and go, I want to cast Ice Crown Scepter, I want to cast Power Artifact, I want to cast whatever, I can just kind of sit there behind a War Room, or sit there behind my boy Reality Chip, best card ever, and just kind of let that carry me through the game, getting card advantage, and eventually on turn 17 playing a Static Orb, and sometimes it just shuts the game down. And I feel Power Scepter does that a little bit better than Poly can, so I'd play that way.
Okay, so you kind of prioritize control and stacks over the combo potential that is in Polykraken.
Yes, because unlike Polykraken, I don't feel like Power Scepter has the rebound capabilities after failing a potential combo. And I think the other decks in the format, once you go for a combo and fail, I don't feel like you can keep up with the other decks. And where Poly, they can just go, cast Polymorph, got countered, okay, I'll try again. I'll get Mystic Sanctuary later, try it again. Or I'll get Proteus Staff and try again. Power Scepter doesn't have that same kind of versatility in its combo line, so I feel as the deck's just best piloted as a Stax control list, and eventually you'll just find your window where you have a cleaner slot to win the game.
Well, in my experience, this control-y, stacksy approach has led to a lot of games lost because it leads to a weird game dynamic and hard misplays by my opponents. I've had that happen a lot. Could you please elaborate on why this is the case? Why do so many people misplay when they face stacks?
So a lot of people, when they're playing against stacks, think that if they're being stacked out by a certain effect, whether it's Rule of Law, Grafdigger's Cage, some mana deficient stacks pieces like Static Orb, Winter Orb, Trinisphere, or whatever, they feel as if, and they're correct. So it's a double-edged sword, right? They're correct in one side, that if they just sit there and wait forever, then obviously the person who's staxing out the board is just going to accumulate advantage, they're going to accumulate cards, and they're going to win in the long run. They're right on that aspect. The mistakes that you're referring to are the mistakes of when they choose to get rid of the stacks pieces. They think it's an immediate threat, and they're like, oh, I got to slam down, I got to get rid of his stacks pieces, even though I'm not the next person to play. And the whole thing kind of shifts around. It's oh, player 4 just destroyed my Rule of Law, or player 4 just destroyed my Static Orb. I wonder what they're trying to do on their turn, right? And it's it kind of tells the entire table that, hey, you just popped my Static Orb. Why are you doing that? Because you're obviously going to try to do something big and threatening during the next turn. Whereas other people who play around stacks, the correct way to play around stacks is don't give your opponents that information in advance. I'll see people player 4 will pop player 1 stacks piece at the end of player 1's turn and be like, oh, now player 2 and player 3 can take their full turn unimpeded before I even get a turn and can win on top of me.
Yeah.
Now there is an exception to that rule. If you feel as if if player 1 is so far ahead that you're not going to be able to rebound and take care of it by yourself, there are situations, and this is where the politics comes into cEDH, where you can be like, hey, I can destroy insert card here. Can you guys, when you untap, do A, B, and C? There's conversations that can be had that way in this format, definitely. But it's not as often as people think.
I've had this issue so many times where like someone would be threatened by a Stax piece and they just randomly remove it without being able to win immediately or without being able to stop the other opponents from winning the game, right? So let's say there's a Trinisphere in play and someone has just drawn 10, 15 cards, has tutored twice, 3 times, just sculpting the perfect hand to go off with like Breach or something. And then another player wastes their resources, their mana, the cards in their hand, to remove the Stax piece for them, opening up a window, allowing them to win. That player that just removed the card is dealing with a Stax piece, dealing with a Stax player, but also enabling another player to win the game. And this exact situation has led to me lose games, not to the player who removed my Stax piece, but to the other players. And I think that's a really big issue. Like, people aren't realizing that a Stax piece in play is not only stopping you from winning the game, but it's also stopping your other 2 opponents from winning the game. And in that, it has value for you as well.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. So unfortunately, one of the big things about Stax pieces, and this is more referring to any skill level of cEDH. I don't feel like this isolates any particular player. Nobody likes playing against Stax.
Yeah,
no
for sure.
People want to play cards. They want to be able to go burr. But it's like the whole point of Stax and cEDH is to slow the game down to prevent those people who are like, oh, I'm just going to, slam this turn 3 Breach. And sure, that's what counter magic. People are like, that's what counter magic is for. We don't need your Stax pieces. There's only so much of that.
Yeah, exactly. We just talked about there is a wrong way to deal with Stax, right? It's just the randomly removing the Stax piece. That's not the correct way to deal with a Stax piece. You should have a different approach. But what would that approach look like? So what would you recommend for players facing a Stax piece? How should they deal with it?
So when you're playing against a Stax piece, you want to think about what that Stax piece is doing to the table. To the table, not them, the entire position, like everybody. You want to look at a card like Static Orb, look at a card like Rule of Law, and let's say someone has a Rule of Law. Player 1 is playing Abzan Stax. They have a Rule of Law in play. Player 2 is playing Rog Silas, Turbonauz, like a Breach Grixis deck. So if you're in seat 4, destroying that Rule of Law before the Rog Silas player gets a turn is not the direction you want to take. You want to you don't want to open up one of the fastest decks in the game to allow them to have a completely unimpeded turn. And they can sit there and say, oh, I'm destroying the Rule of Law, but then I'm going to hope the Grixis player is going to do something for me. I'm like, yeah, they're going to do something for you. They're going to kill you. And it's like, I don't want to tunnel vision it and make it seem like you have to remove the Stax piece before your turn, because that's when you're most likely to get your interaction countered, right?
Yeah.
Like if player 1 is taking their turn, you're player 4, and then player 2 goes, player 3 goes, and then before the end of player 3's turn, you're saying, oh, I'm going to kill this Rule of Law now. You're telegraphing to the entire table what your game plan is. So playing around Stax has a lot of variance, right? It's not as simple as, oh, pop it before my turn, and then I'm gonna win, and nobody can stop me, or pop it at the end of somebody else's turn. It's a very wide scope. But you want to think about what the Stax pieces is doing to everyone. Not you, not the person who has it, the entire table. And gauge when you think is the best time to get rid of it. Or, one of my favorite things to do is sometimes a Stax piece in the board, like we're Urza players, let's look at Collector, for example.
Yeah.
If someone's trying to combo through Underworld Breach, what do we need to deal with Collector for? Let them do it.
Exactly.
We could just sit there and be like, oh, I can't tap my mana card for 2, darn. But this guy who's playing the Underworld Breach deck can't win the game, period, unless this card goes away. So that's why I'm saying, think about, when you're playing against Stax, think about what it's doing to each individual player, as opposed to what it's just doing for you. And you'll find that you'll have an easier time playing around it or dealing with it or removing it at a better point for you, as opposed to like that narrow-minded viewpoint of, oh, I got to get rid of the Stax piece so I can do A, B, and C.
Exactly.
Because if you tunnel vision like that, you don't know what the other people are going to do. They could do something way worse. So
yeah,
that's how
they could just stop your win attempt if you're not actually ready to win. Like if the Stax piece has been around for like two turns, everybody's been drawing a few cards, maybe tutoring, they might be ready to win, and then you pop that Stax piece, try to win, they stop you, and then they take the opportunity and win on their turns, right? If you see a Stax piece, like, don't get that tunnel vision, right? Instead, like, take your time for the perfect moment to remove that Stax piece, maybe sculpt the hand, take those turns, and take into consideration what that Stax piece does not only to you, but to the whole table. And don't forget that, like, a Stax piece is not the value engine. A Stax piece is what's stopping your opponents from gaining value, right? You should have a look at who is gaining value through that Stax piece and what are they gaining value with, and maybe take care of that in order to be able to catch up or not let them have that extreme advantage, right? People tend to see the threat that's on the board, which is the Stax piece, but they tend to forget that there's a threat in people's hand, right? They have 7 cards in hand, which can win on the spot. This is cEDH after all. You can win with 2 cards and 3 mana.
Exactly what you said. Stax is inhibiting what you're doing, for sure. It's the point of the cards. The point of the cards is to slow down everybody. Unless, like, of course, why this is relevant to Urza, just to expand on that, is our Stax pieces are asymmetrical, right? They don't apply to the rest of the table. So cards like the ones that we play are ones that are exclusively hurting 3 people and just leaving us to play however it is we want to play. So it's a little bit more dynamic in why people specifically go after Urza Stax pieces, and to reference what you said at the beginning of the video, why like sometimes you'll lose with this play pattern, this like new control play pattern. People see Urza Stax pieces as just a good card for Urza, which it is. Let's be real here. It's phenomenal. If we get down to Urza Winter Orb or Urza Static Orb, we are in clear control of that game. But a lot of the times, people will look at Urza's Stax pieces and be like, I don't want you to win, so I'm going to pop this and I'm going to give somebody else a chance. I wish I could say that doesn't happen often, but it does.
It happens way too often.
I know you could say, I know you can agree with me on this. It happens quite a bit.
Yeah, it happens way too often. And like, that's exactly why we're making this video, right? So like, not to benefit our game, but to like teach people how to deal with the Stax piece better and make a more informed decision and like not have that tunnel vision.
Right, and what it comes down to for me is like, if you're popping a Stax piece incorrectly, like, okay, maybe I'm not winning, but most of the time, neither is the person making this incorrect
exactly,
play.
That's the issue,
so
right?
It's like if you're doing something wrong and it's working, then maybe we're off. Maybe we're not thinking about it clearly. But they're doing that, and then like I said, I'll go back to the player 1 versus player 4 example. Player 4 will do that, like, yeah, I got rid of the Winter Orb, and then player 2 will win behind him, and they'll be like, oh, at least it wasn't Urza.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
It's the boogeyman, man, right? He's just the boogeyman. What can you do other than try to inform people about it? I think that's it. Let's wrap this up. Thank you, Matt, for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Again, it's a pleasure to have you on our Discord server, and you do some really great work, especially with your reality chip-centric deck list, which I'm currently testing. It's really great. I will link it down below. And yeah, thank you guys for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, share the video, comment down below, and share it with your friends. It really helps to get the video out there to new viewers. And if you want to support me, please consider becoming a patron. Hop over to the Urza Discord server and also my own Discord server, where we tend to play games almost daily. All the links will be in the description box down below. Thank you for being here, Matt. This is Eisenherz, that's Matt, and auf Wiedersehen.